Now, the second phase. Okay, now, I do love progressive resistance and I do love basic exercises. My favorite two exercises are incline barbell benches and squats. So now, when your body's warmed up and it's ready to rock and roll, this is where I like to put in the compound movements. So this phase 2 right here, that's what this means, train explosively. So now we're going to use squats, we're going to use incline benches. There's various rows that you can use, for your back, that you can do explosively. Now, when I'm training these movements, the reps might come down a little bit. They might come down to 5 or 6 or 7. And what I like for people to do is I like for them to generate as much force as they can when they're executing the lift. So let's talk about a squat. So if you're doing a squat, you're coming down with real good controlled tight form. And then when you're coming up, you're coming up as hard as you can. If you're doing like an incline bench for your chest, as you're coming up as hard as you can. I want you to push as hard as you can against the bar. We want to make as many muscle fibers fire as we possibly can. We want everything engaged. The rep shouldn't be so easy that you're throwing the bar. It's not like classic speed work. It's not like that. It's not just boom, boom, boom. But it's also not so heavy that you're doing grinder reps. There's a nice steady speed where you're just pushing as hard as you can.
Are you using a tempo with that?
Great question. So Sweet's question was, am I using a tempo with that? Generally speaking, a 2-second descent, maybe a 3, but a 2-second descent is usually adequate. And then it's driving it up hard. Now, the way that when Dave and I train, we've noticed this over the last couple of years, it seems like the more we train, the older we get, the end of the eccentric part, it's almost like we're turning everything into a rest pause these days. You know, I mean, you get the weight down, you stop, and then you drive up really hard. So that we're almost eliminating momentum out of everything we do these days. Even like a leg curl.
Like leg press in the same way, my assistant stuff, and stop almost at the bottom. We're so slow.
Yeah, and it feels awesome. And if you're a powerlifter or a strength athlete, you're taking the momentum out of it, and to me, you're developing awesome strength in that as well. I mean, that's not my area of expertise, but it would seem to carry over in the strength. So I don't really get into tempos a whole lot, and the only reason why is because tempo is secondary to having the mind-muscle connect and generating the tension on the muscle. That is more important. If you're lowering it under a certain speed and driving up at a certain speed, but you don't have the tension on the muscle the way it should be, then the tempo is useless. It's garbage. It means nothing. And you can even think about it from a basic perspective. You could translate it to like sprinters. You know, look at how they're training their bodies, muscle fibers. They're obviously, when you train that way, you're obviously stimulating fast twitch muscle fibers more than slow twitch muscle fibers. Look at how sprinters' legs are compared to long distance. You know, that's just and the interesting thing is, I'm going to ask Eric this, but the reading that I've done says about 50% of your muscle fiber makeup is genetic, but you can actually alter the other 50%. The way you train, would you agree or disagree with that? Yeah. So the way you train, it's funny because they take biopsies from a lot of these athletes and they say, see, it's all fast twitch muscle fiber, but you didn't see what they were before. They might have changed, a lot of that muscle fiber composition might have changed as a result of their training. So I like that explosive stuff because I feel like it's really creating not only the neural part and muscle fibers firing, I feel like it's almost creating the right environment for you to switch on more muscle, or to kind of change some of those muscle fibers into fast twitch muscle fibers. Does that make sense?
Recruit them more.
Yeah, recruit them more. And if you're recruiting them, then that's what you want. Was there another question back there? Okay. So let's back up a second. Our first phase, what are we doing? Getting the blood in there, establishing a mind-muscle connection. And we're using an exercise that it's not going to beat the heck out of your body. Now, we feel really good. So now what do we do? What's our second movement? What's our second phase? Explosive. We're using some weight. We're squatting. We're benching. We're deadlifting. Okay? So those are two different ways to achieve hypertrophy. See how we didn't corner ourselves into one particular theory? Now, the next phase, super max pump. There's in the last 5-6 years, there's been quite a bit of research finally that's come out saying, oh, the pump is a good thing. You can actually grow from it. Well, thanks for enlightening us. We didn't figure that out 30 years ago. And that's how a lot of the research is now. I find it's awesome. It's great that it's coming out, but honestly, it's stuff we figured out like 20, 30 years ago. So in terms of a pump, okay, you're really practicing muscle volumization. You're driving all kinds of blood in there, and all these good things are happening. There are many different theories on what's actually happening. Some people say the protein synthesis is turned on more and more as you put pressure against a cell membrane and you're loading it with your muscle with blood and so forth. Here's what I would tell you. I just think that using a good weight and getting a great pump on the muscle will help you grow. I don't try to get real deep into it with most people. There's a lot of research out there if you want to look at it, but I think it's very effective. So now, would it make sense to put the Supermax stuff before this? Probably not, because you'd probably be so tired you'd be hurting, so you would lose, your phase 2 work would lose effectiveness. So now you see how the order that you form this stuff, how it has to jive, how it has to, one phase has to feed into the other. This is what I talk about when I say thinking and figuring out how to solve training issues and things like that. This is a thought process. Because a lot of people go, John, you're always rotating movements. How do you know if you're getting any better? No, there's a reason why I'm doing everything. Okay. So this third phase, you did a set today on a leg press. Okay. So what this gentleman did was he just did a drop set, right? He went up, he kept going up in weight, doing sets of 10. And then when he got to his last set, he did 10 reps. He could barely get it. And then we pulled some weight off and he did some more. And then we pulled some weight off and he did some more. Very hard set. This is where you use all the fun stuff. This is where you do drop sets, you do the iso holds. You guys do iso holds much? I love iso holds. I went out to train with Tom Platts about 3 years ago, and I might have stuck one in here and there, but it wasn't the way Tom wanted me to do it. And I give him full credit because he's the one that really pushed this on me. So we would do like stand up for a second. We would do a curl, and there's one thing you can do in isometric. So contractions, eccentric, concentric, and isometric, right? So I just had in my mind, okay, I'm just going to hold the weight here. That's an isometric contraction, right? He was like, no, that's not how we do it. So he would I would hold the dumbbell and he would push down and see how you have to fight? Yeah. So we would do these holds for 7 or 8 seconds at the end of our last set. So we would do, Dave and I, we like to do them on hack squats as a good example. As many good reps as you can, then you come down about a third of the way, and then we'll hang on the machine, while the other person fights and fights and fights. So you want to have to fight as hard as you can to maintain that isometric contraction. That is an incredibly intense technique. Incredibly painful, incredibly intense. It's one of my favorites. And then, of course, you've got forced reps. You've got all kinds of these things you can do. So how do you use this stuff? How do you know how many drop sets to use? What's the correct application of this? Well, everybody's a little different, but I have some general thoughts on that. And what I like to do is I like to have people work up to this weight that they can do maybe 8 or 10 times. And then on the last set, that's when we do Dave calls it the go apeshit set. Okay, that last set is where we apply it. Now, it was interesting because a lot of us in this room, we were in Canada last week, and we heard Dorian Yates talking. And Dorian Yates was talking about how he did his rows. And he said, yeah, I'd do a set of 8. I'd go up and wait, I'd do a set of 8. I'd go up and wait, and I'd do a set of 8. And then the last one would be really hard. Okay, that was my one set. So I just kind of chuckle because I'm like, well, that's the same thing I do, but I call it 4 sets, and he calls it 1 set. It's the same thing. It's working your way up and then going crazy on that last set, pushing yourself, the craziest pump possible, and then you're done. If you do it right, you're not going to do a second or a third or a 4th set like that. Can you imagine trying to do 4 sets of those? If you do it right, there's no way. So my point is the way we apply this is on the last set of which, we might do three sets, and the 3rd set will be the one where we use this technique, where we add in all this extra stuff. Does that make sense? And you'll find this a lot with training theory. I know some guys who actually train with Mike Mincer. And they're like, Mike did the same thing everybody else does. He would do curls, and he would just keep going up in weight, and then he would do a really hard set, and he would say, there's my one set. It's the same thing that everybody else was doing, except they counted. I don't think a set has to be the complete annihilation to call it a set. All sets don't have to be that way. So the sets working up to the crazy sets, to me, still have value, so I count them. I don't count, obviously, light warm-ups, but I'm going to count a couple of the sets close to the end. So it's just, the reason why I mention that is because be careful what you read and everything, because a lot of times people will come to conclusions that aren't, really, like, Dave and I used to put all these crazy sets out on YouTube, and people were like, you can't train like that, you're doing all your sets like that. I'm like, that's the one set we did that day. Now, I would have gladly put in all the boring sets if you wanted to see them. I just thought you wanted to see the fun stuff, the crazy stuff. But people would like jump to these conclusions like, well, everything they're doing is like that. No, it's not. There's a strategy. So this third phase, that's what we do. We're hammering the muscle. We're getting it so full of blood, it feels like your skin's going to tear. We're maximizing the pump, cellular swelling. Now, the fourth phase is it's actually involves stretching the muscle.